Story number 1, Feed Interruption. I arrived for night shift at the Regional Surveillance Hub at 2300 hours on a Tuesday in late September, assigned to monitor live feeds from 12 municipal traffic intersections across 3 counties. The facility was a converted office building off Route 50, 3rd floor, no windows, just rows of monitors and the steady hum of server cooling systems. My assignment was standard rotation work, watch for accidents, log unusual traffic patterns, forward anything requiring law enforcement response to the appropriate dispatcher. I had been doing this for 16 months. At 01:30 hours, Feed 7 showed a pedestrian crossing against the signal at the same intersection in Loudoun County for the 4th consecutive cycle, wearing identical clothing each time. I noticed it because the intersection was otherwise empty at that hour, and the figure moved with the same gait, same pace, same posture each time. Dark jacket, light colored pants, hands in pockets. The camera angle made it difficult to see facial features clearly, but the repetition was obvious enough that I rewound the feed to confirm. 4 crossings, each approximately 8 minutes apart, each beginning from the northwest corner and ending at the southeast. I followed protocol and flagged the feed for technical review, assuming a playback loop or timestamp error, but the system diagnostics returned no faults. The automated report indicated all camera functions were nominal, timestamps synchronized with the master server, no packet loss, no corrupted frames. I logged the flag anyway and noted the pedestrian's description in the shift report file. The intersection returned to its usual pattern, empty asphalt. Traffic signals cycling through their programmed sequence, occasional vehicle pass-throughs. By 02:15 hours, the same figure appeared simultaneously on feeds 7, 9, and 11, all different locations, all crossing against the signal in perfect synchronization. Feed 9 was in Fauquier County, 16 miles west. Feed 11 was south, near the Stafford line. I checked the clothing, the posture, the walking speed. Identical. All 3 figures crossed their respective intersections in lockstep, reaching the far curb at the same moment. I ran diagnostics again. No errors. I checked the master clock. Synchronized. I pulled up the geographic overlay to confirm the distances between camera locations. There was no possibility of the same individual appearing at all 3 sites simultaneously. I contacted my supervisor by secure line, but he instructed me to log it as a software glitch and continue monitoring without filing an incident report. His voice was steady, almost rehearsed. He told me the system had been experiencing intermittent issues with feed duplication due to a recent firmware update, and that a technician would address it during business hours. He emphasized that I should not escalate the matter further and should continue standard observation duties. I acknowledged the instruction and returned to the monitors. At 03:40 hours, every feed showed the same pedestrian at every intersection, all walking toward the camera positions, and the recording timestamps began counting backward. 12 identical figures, 12 different locations, all moving with that same unhurried stride, hands in pockets, faces angled downward. The timestamps in the lower right corner of each feed rolled backward in unison: 03:39, 03:30, 80:37. I checked the master server clock on my workstation. It displayed the correct time. Only the feed timestamps were reversing. The figures continued walking forward, while time ran backward around them. I initiated an unauthorized system shutdown against direct orders, but the feeds continued running on black screens, audio still transmitting footsteps growing closer to each camera location. I had pressed the emergency shutdown toggle, heard the server banks begin their spin-down cycle, watched the monitors go dark one by one, but the audio channels remained active. 12 separate audio feeds, 12 sets of footsteps, all synchronized, all growing louder. The footsteps had a wet quality, as though the pavement was slick, though none of the feeds had shown rain. I could hear the rhythm clearly: step, 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 pause. Step, 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 pause. The pause grew longer with each cycle, as if the figures were stopping to listen. When the footsteps stopped, all 12 feeds returned to normal operation simultaneously, showing empty intersections with correct timestamps, as if the previous 2 hours had not occurred. The monitors flickered back to life without input from me. The server banks resumed full operation. The timestamp displays all read 0350, 2 hours, matching my workstation clock. I reviewed the stored footage from the past 3 hours. The files showed nothing but routine traffic and empty intersections. No pedestrians, no synchronized crossings, no reversed timestamps. The flagged incidents I had logged were gone from the shift report file. The system behaved as though I had spent a quiet night, watching nothing happen. I completed my shift at 0700 hours and submitted a standard report indicating no significant events. My supervisor called me into his office that afternoon. He did not ask me questions. He informed me that I was being placed on mandatory leave pending a fitness for duty evaluation, effective immediately. He slid a non-disclosure agreement across the desk, already prepared, already dated. The document cited equipment malfunction and operator fatigue as contributing factors to a perceived anomaly that had not actually occurred. I was instructed to sign. I signed. The evaluation consisted of 3 sessions with a contracted psychologist who asked careful questions about my sleep schedule, stress levels, and history of visual disturbances. I answered carefully. I was cleared for return to duty after 2 weeks, but my assignment had been changed to daytime administrative support at a different facility. I did not request clarification. I did not file a grievance. The surveillance hub was quietly decommissioned 5 weeks later and reclassified as a data storage facility with no live monitoring capabilities. I learned this from a routine personnel email announcing the closure and thanking staff for their service during the transition. No explanation was provided for the shutdown. The equipment was removed over a single weekend. I drove past the building once, months later. The 3rd floor windows were covered with blackout film. The parking lot was empty. The incident remains archived under a technical malfunction designation, operator error subcategory, no follow-up required. Story number 2, Forestry Cabin 8. I arrived at Tower 7 on the afternoon of October 28th with the standard winterization checklist and a weather window that was already closing. The access road had deteriorated since the last maintenance pass in August, and I had to leave the vehicle a quarter mile down and hike in with my equipment. The tower itself stood above the tree line, a steel frame structure with an enclosed cabin at the top and a small equipment shed at the base. The paint was flaking, and the guy wires showed rust consistent with the age of the installation, which was scheduled for decommission the following spring. I noted the time in my field log as 3:15 in the afternoon and began the exterior inspection. The shed was unsecured, which violated protocol, and inside I found the propane tanks still connected to the heating line. The radio equipment had been removed from its mount, but left on the floor, still connected to the battery bank. I photographed both violations and added them to the preliminary report. The tower stairs were external, wrapping around the frame in a standard configuration. I noticed damage to the steps between the 7th and 12th landings. The metal had been bent outward, away from the central column. The deformation pattern was inconsistent with wind load or impact from falling branches. It appeared as though force had been applied from inside the stairwell, which made no sense given the open framework design. I climbed to the cabin and found the door unlocked. Inside, the space was intact but showed signs of abrupt departure. The bunk was unmade. A medication bottle sat on the counter next to the sink, prescribed to someone named Gerald Hines, which matched the name in my briefing materials as the last assigned watch operator. His wallet was in the drawer beneath the logbook shelf. I documented both items and continued the inspection. The logbook entries were current through September 14th. The handwriting was consistent throughout, noting standard observations of weather patterns, wildlife movement, and routine maintenance tasks. The final entry was made at 2100 hours and noted clear skies and low wind. There was no indication of an incident, no mention of early departure, and no forwarding notes. My briefing materials had not included any incident report or explanation for the early termination of his rotation, which had been scheduled to run through the end of September. I completed the interior checklist. The heating system was functional but still active, which was another protocol violation. The windows were intact. The fire suppression equipment was in acceptable condition. I turned my attention to the radio system, which was mounted above the desk. The unit was powered on and tuned to a frequency outside our standard service band. I checked the posted frequency list and found no match. When I activated the receiver, I heard a continuous low-tone transmission, steady and unvarying. It did not match the pattern of any emergency beacon or weather station I was familiar with. I documented the frequency and attempted to retune the radio to our primary channel, but the dial would not move. I disconnected the unit from power, waited 30 seconds, and reconnected it. The radio returned to the same frequency, and the tone resumed immediately. At 16:45, I used my satellite phone to contact my supervisor and reported the missing operator, the abandoned personal effects, and the radio anomaly. I was instructed to complete the standard inspection only, leave all materials in place, and return the following morning. When I asked about the incident report from September, I was told no report had been filed, and that I should not delay the inspection with inquiries outside my assignment scope. I secured the cabin and descended to the shed, where I prepared my overnight equipment. The temperature was dropping, and the forecast called for possible snow after midnight. I ate a cold meal and reviewed my notes. At 2200 hours, I conducted a final perimeter check with my flashlight and confirmed all access points were locked and documented. I returned to the shed and was preparing my sleeping bag when I heard movement above me. The sound was metallic, consistent with footsteps on the tower stairs. I took my flashlight and stepped outside. The tower was dark. I illuminated the stairway and saw no one. The sound stopped. I returned to the shed and entered the observation in my field log at 22:30. At 23:15, the sound resumed. This time it was prolonged. A steady progression of footsteps ascending from the mid-level platform to the cabin. I went outside again and directed my light upward. The cabin windows were dark and the door remained closed, exactly as I had left it. I climbed to the first platform and checked the lock. It was still engaged. The footsteps continued inside the cabin. I could hear them clearly, pacing from one end of the small space to the other. I called out and identified myself. The footsteps stopped. I waited for several minutes, then descended and returned to the shed. At 0400 hours, I collected my equipment, walked to the vehicle, and maintained a visual observation position until dawn. I did not return to the tower. At first light, I photographed the site from a distance, retrieved my documentation from the shed without ascending the tower, and drove directly to the district station. My supervisor accepted the incomplete inspection without comment. Tower 7 was reclassified for immediate decommission rather than seasonal closure. I was reassigned to Southern District rotations for the remainder of the season and instructed to forward all documentation to the regional office. The tower was removed by private contractor within 2 weeks. I was not involved in the decommission process. Gerald Hines was listed in the internal directory as a voluntary resignation effective September 14th. No exit interview was filed. No forwarding contact information was provided. The incident file was archived under Facility Decommission Records and required no further action from my office. Story number 3: Pharmacy Audit. I arrived at Harlan County Regional Medical Center on a Tuesday morning in late September to conduct a routine quarterly inspection of their pharmacy storage and controlled substance logs. The building sat at the end of a county road that wound through hills covered in early autumn color, and the parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in at 8:30. I had performed this same inspection 4 times before over the past 2 years, and nothing in the preliminary documentation suggested this visit would differ from the others. The pharmacy director, a woman in her mid-50s who had worked there for 18 years, met me in the lobby and mentioned that their night pharmacist had resigned without notice 3 days earlier. She seemed tired, but not particularly concerned. She said he had called the administrator's office on Saturday morning and said he would not be returning, that something personal had come up. She told me they were already interviewing replacements and that the day shift had been covering the additional hours without issue. During the initial walkthrough, I noted that all refrigerated medications were stored at proper temperature, and the labeling system was consistent with federal guidelines. The workspace was clean. The dispensing logs were organized chronologically in 3 ring binders on a shelf near the computer terminal. But when I asked to see the backup generator log as part of the facility systems check, I found it had activated 7 times in the past 2 weeks, despite no recorded power outages. The director looked at the log herself and said that was unusual. She said the maintenance supervisor had checked the system twice and found nothing wrong. When I opened the controlled substance vault to verify inventory against the digital records, I found 23 vials of morphine sulfate arranged in a perfect circle on the floor, none of which appeared in any dispensing log. The vials were standing upright. The circle was approximately 3 feet in diameter. I asked the director to step into the vault with me and confirm what I was seeing. She stared at the vials for several seconds and then said she had no explanation. I asked her when the vault had last been opened. She said the previous evening at 6, when she had locked it herself after the day shift ended. The pharmacy director insisted the vault had been locked since the previous evening, and that only she and the former night pharmacist had the combination, which had not been changed in 4 years. I examined the lock mechanism and found no signs of tampering. I photographed the arrangement of vials from 3 angles and then checked the vault's internal camera system, which the facility had installed 8 months earlier as part of a compliance upgrade. The camera had not recorded anything since 9:40 on Saturday night. The screen showed only a blue error message indicating a storage fault. I contacted my regional supervisor to report the discrepancy, but while on hold, I heard what sounded like rhythmic tapping coming from inside the climate-controlled storage room, which was empty when I opened it. The tapping stopped as soon as I turned the handle. I stood in the doorway for nearly a minute, listening. The room contained wire shelving units stocked with boxed medications and IV solutions. The temperature reading on the wall unit showed 38 degrees, which was within acceptable range. I closed the door and returned to the phone, but the call had disconnected. Following protocol, I initiated a full manual count of all controlled substances, during which the digital inventory system crashed 3 times and displayed dispensing timestamps from dates that had not yet occurred. The first crash happened while I was counting fentanyl patches. The system rebooted on its own and showed a dispensing record for October 9th, 16 days ahead. The second crash occurred during the hydromorphone count, and the timestamp read November 2nd. The third crash happened without my touching the keyboard at all. The director stood beside me and watched the screen. She said the system had been installed 11 months ago and had never malfunctioned before last week. At approximately 2:15 in the afternoon, the backup generator activated again with no power interruption, and every electronic lock in the pharmacy disengaged simultaneously for 4 seconds. I heard the locks click open in sequence, starting with the vault and moving outward to the storage room, the refrigerator units, and finally the main pharmacy door leading to the hallway. The lights did not flicker. The computer did not shut down. After 4 seconds, the locks engaged again in reverse order. The director looked at me and asked if I thought the building had an electrical problem. I told her I did not know. I made the decision to seal the pharmacy and contacted the regional compliance office to request an immediate administrative hold, citing equipment malfunction and inventory irregularities requiring technical investigation. I used the director's office phone because my cell service had stopped working inside the building. The compliance officer I spoke with instructed me to complete a short form incident report on site, leave copies of all documentation in a sealed envelope with the facility administrator, and return to the regional office by end of business. He told me someone from the Technical Services Division would be assigned to follow up within 72 hours. The facility was issued a temporary operational waiver to use a satellite pharmacy in the neighboring county. I submitted my report with sections redacted per supervisor instruction, and I was reassigned to hospital inspections in the Western District effective the following month. I was told the case file had been transferred to a specialized compliance unit, and that my involvement was complete. I never received a follow-up summary, and the facility does not appear on my current inspection roster. The incident was logged under Administrative Code 774 and archived as resolved.